Yeah, we should be on. Go ahead and
All
start
right.
off.
All right, that's what's up. So, what's up, Facebook family? Hope all is well. Hope your day is going well. We're back at it again for we're having a midday talk with my brother Brian, one third of the three-headed monster. Coming to us live out of Philadelphia. I'm coming to you live out of North Carolina. Just a disclaimer as I start every conversation. It's just that, a conversation. What we speak on is our opinions, the facts as we know them. Please don't take anything at face value. Never take anything as just truth. Research it for yourself. Find the truth in it. Find the facts for yourself. Then when we come back, we can speak on the same plane. As always, it's always good to be with like-minded people. And that's what you call community, like-minded people. So if you have opinions, if you have questions, if you have comments, please feel free during this podcast, this live, to drop those. And we'll answer them, and we'll give you some feedback on what it is that we're discussing. What's up, B?
Yo, what's good? What's good, y'all? Chilling at home with my boys, since they still out of school and everything. So, other than that, man, just doing the do.
Right.
One thing it is I definitely want to discuss is I know a lot of people. Sorry, y'all. It's some people don't understand the conversation that we was having on Friday, and sometimes people get misconstrued on what we're talking about. But it's a topic that we should be talking about, but a lot of people don't like to talk about it because it's not interesting to them at this point. Normally when we do on Mondays, we try to do updates on how everybody's doing. I also wanted to say to all people that's on the front line, the hospital workers, the people that's out there risking their lives, due to this virus, and how, thankful that I am that you're doing that. I have family members that's literally in the medical field that's out there doing this on the front line. Just finding out that there's some family members on my wife's side that actually has the virus. So
Right.
sometimes you really don't understand how deep it is until it touches you. It hits you home. I'm still thinking on the same path that I'm actually thinking. But there's been a lot of things about this virus and stuff like that. But to talk, such what I was talking about earlier, on Friday we had talked about what are we, us people of color, us Negroes, African Americans, blacks, all these other names other than what we are. And the topic that we was talking about with Brother Wheeler, we was talking about, are we African or are we indigenous to this land, or the true Aborigines? That's a study that I stick on. That's a study that I'm studying on. And some people don't like to hear it because the thing that they don't like about it is, why are we talking about this? Is that not important?
Yeah, right.
At the same time, it's extremely important because once you have a foundation, then you have a case to, to build against the country that the land was stolen from. And yes, this land was stolen from us. Some people don't want to see it. Some people don't want to hear it. But then if I say, oh, you're going to get reparations, understanding what the reparation is actually saying and what it's telling you is, when you're accepting something they're saying, say for instance, reparations, you are literally telling them, yes, I am from Africa. That's not noting that we are descendants of Africa, but history has showed us, books have showed us that they've been traveling back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. They've been trading with brothers in Africa for thousands of years. But, you know, if I don't teach you that in school, well, you're not going to question it because you don't know. But today is more of a freestyle day. The day is just us just being us and just talking and, you know, us being on some realness. And sorry for that.
Right.
I'm good. My computer came unplugged, so I wanted to plug it back up.
What's up?
I just wanted to address that because that's something that a lot of people, you know, don't want to take. We have to understand how important that is. Because
Right.
we're the only people in this world that don't have any foundation on what we are or who we are. And
Right.
everybody else in the world is, you know. But when it comes to us blacks in America, we're slaves. And that's not true. But go ahead, man. You know me.
Yeah.
I've been doing this all day.
Yeah, definitely. And like I said, it's something we definitely could discuss. You dropped several things. But first I'll start with the clarification of when we ask the question, are we Indian or are we African? How you frame up what an African is, how you frame up what an Indian is kind of what you've been taught and what you've been conditioned to think those words mean. And so that's why when people say, well, what are you talking about? You're definitely African. You're not definitely African. African, like I said, is a term that's not as old as the people that are in the land. We all did come from the same place, but you have to understand span of time and how long we've been separated from one group to another. Now on the East Coast of America, West Coast of Africa, of course, there's always been trade for thousands and thousands of years. Not only are you trading products, not only are you trading commerce, but you're also trading people. You know, people are going back and forth, traveling from one continent to another. So the thought of us moving and being in one place or another for thousands of years, that shouldn't be shocking to you. But what we talk about when we're talking about it, we're talking about it specifically.
Yo, you went out. Hold up. You went out. Your mic. Jerome, your mic. Can't hear you. I don't know what happened. Yeah, you went out. What happened? What happened? No, your mic went out. What is that extra sound that we're listening to? No. You went out. I don't know what happened. I try to log off and log back on. Come on, Jerome. Come on.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah. All right. What you do, man?
Oh, I know what happened. My daughter, she's using my car, and when she crunked my car up, all the audio went out to the car.
I was wondering what was going on. I was like, this sounds like somebody doing all this moving. So your Bluetooth in your car. All right, I got you. All right, now go ahead, jump back in.
So I did all that talking and nobody heard it, right?
Nope.
Okay, so so let me start from where I was at the beginning.
Yeah.
When we were speaking on the word Indian and we were speaking on the word African, what we use those terms for is to differentiate where your nationality is.
That's it.
Not the group of people that you belong to, because haplogroup wise, we all belong in the same African sub-Saharan groups. So when we talk about nationality, it's because of placement. One country cannot deal with a person to get, because what we're talking about getting, when you mention reparations, is reciprocity from a country. And
Sure.
that you can't get. It's only from nation to nation, right? So here's the interesting thing, though. When you talk about reparations were given right after slavery, but they were given to slave owners.
True.
That to me was crazy, because they talk about, where we can't do reparation, but reparations were given to slave owners for losing people that they had kidnapped, raped, sodomized, abused, and used for years and years and years upon years. Those are the people that receive reparation.
Sure.
And then I won't even get into the economical part of slavery, but when we talk about why are we here, how long we've been here, where are we here, those questions. I mean, all you have to do is, it doesn't take deep study to find that. That to me, why people question that's a bigger question to me. Why do you question it?
But we question it because of what we've been taught, what we've been somewhat brainwashed. And the reason why I say it's something that's important, because the reason why I say it's important, look at how much money the United States have given to people of the Holocaust. That wasn't our battle, or we paid Germany, we paid people in Europe, we have paid even the Japanese people that was here in America of the wrongdoing of what they was doing with World War II. And it's kind of funny, it's like, why are you giving these people reparations, but when it comes to the blacks that you have here, it's kind of like, you're nobody. You know what I'm saying? So if we see our country constantly kicking out money for other people, more European countries, that's basically what they're saying. But when it comes to us, it's like, I don't know, because everybody got to understand this history of this slave notion that's been written didn't really get written until like the 1940s, 1950s, 1960s. So in other words, they changed the narrative to the story. And that's where when integration kind of kicks in and it kind of messes up, because I guarantee you, if we wasn't integrated as we are now, we'd be having a different talk. We'd be having a different, meaning of what's going on, because our people will be telling us who we are and what stock we come from, versus somebody else telling a story. It's like when somebody say Egyptology. You know what I'm saying? Like, why is Egypt the only place that, but Egypt is, yes, it's rich in history, but it's not the history, and it's not the richest of the history of Africa. Everybody may seem like Egypt is by itself. Like Egypt is its own country. No, I mean, like it's Northern Africa. But let them tell it. They make you think that it's carved out, and it's not that part of the notion of that is actually in Africa. Or when we talk about the Middle East.
Middle East.
You know what I'm saying? So if I keep telling you stuff, if I keep changing things, if I keep giving you a different narrative to the truth that you're hearing, and you don't hear it from nowhere else. That's the thing about it, is nobody else is coming to you with this information. So when you do hear it, the first thing you do is you block. This is what you do to it. Like, I don't want to hear because where you get that from? I say I can read a book and get it from this. I can get, our ancestors, our elders that passed away was trying to tell us this, but at the same time, you don't want to hear it. Martin Luther King was trying to tell us that. I mean, if you want to use him as that last great civil, great leader that was trying to tell us something and we didn't want to listen to it. So Martin Luther King was telling us who we were. But at the same time, I didn't hear it. That's not part of that. That's not part of that big speech, but go ahead, jump in.
No, man, you dead on. I think I look at it from this perspective, especially when I speak to people about who we are, who we were, who we are, and who we're going to be.
Yeah.
You got to think that, let's say you have somebody that's been abused, right? So somebody that's been abused and mistreated, but they've never had the ability to speak on the treatment, because when they speak on it, stop being the victim. Stop wanting a handout. And then during this whole time, you're being told that you're ugly. You're ugly. You're ugly every day. And so at some point, that abused person believes that they're ugly and that the treatment that they got, they deserve. And so this is what you're looking at when you talk about the Black community and why it's so hard to heal, is because you got all this dysfunction, but you're being medicated on Wednesdays and Sundays about your problems, but nobody's ever telling you how to solve them. Nobody's ever telling you how to move forward from them. It's just that, you was born that way, and so he's gonna forgive you anyway. So, but nobody ever told you that you was put in that condition. Nobody ever told you that somebody manipulates how you see yourself. Nobody told you that the reason why they don't want you to understand who you are is so you don't claim what you have and what has been taken from you. And I know we always allude to what's been taken from us, but we're talking about from the standpoint of land. We're talking about from the standpoint of resources. We're talking about from the standpoint of economic growth and economic gain. If you look at what this country has gained through us, there's no need that we should be the richest ethnic group in the world just by what we've gained for one country. But we always keep internalizing all this hurt. We keep internalizing all this pain. And that's why it manifests itself as skinny jeans, and it manifests itself as this odd behavior, is because, we internalize the pain instead of dealing with the pain. Because one, we don't know who to talk to about our pain. We don't know who to express, because, if a man talks to another man about how he's hurting, he's a punk, he's soft, but we don't understand that that's true strength, is having the ability to speak about what hurts you. And that's the thing with our community, man. We just don't speak to one another on a level of trying to change things for the better. Our identity is big, because you need to know who you are. For me to speak to you, I know who you are, you know who I am, we know who we are. So it's easy for us to have a conversation. But when people listen from the outside who have no thoughts of what their identity is, it sounds strange. Why are they talking like that? Why are they trying to steal somebody else's history?
But that's history's been stolen from us, though. That's
what it sounds like to them, though, because they don't know their history. It sounds like you're stealing somebody else's history.
I got a question for you, Jerome. When was the majority of the slave revolts happening? Or they call it slave revolts? Are we looking around 1600s, 1700s, early 1800s?
You said the what now?
Slave revolts, or
slave revolts. Yeah. Most of them happened like during the 1700s into the 1800s. That was the strongest of the slave revolts, and the reason why is because slavery, by definition, changed during the late 1600s. When you talk about the early 1600s, I mean, everybody was enslaved. White people, what you call Spanish people,
Yeah.
Black people, not Oriental, but Asian people. You know, everybody. I was thinking of the terms that they were using back in those days.
Yeah.
But Asian,
before white and black came into the picture.
right, Asian people. You know, everybody was enslaved at that time, but it was more of an indentured type. You know, slaves had rights. But when it moved to chattel slavery, late 1600s, that's when you see it all just moving towards black. And the reason for that is because every other ethnic group was falling apart. They were dying too quickly. And see, they could do almost anything they wanted to these blacks, and you couldn't break them, you couldn't beat them, you couldn't kill them. They keep multiplying. So that's why they were the perfect commodity. And the crazy thing about it, when you start to do your research and understand, not only white people owned slaves, black people did too. Black people owned, especially in Louisiana. In Louisiana, there was some of the biggest plantations were black owned. But that's because it was all about capitalism. And that's what drove slavery, capitalism. That's what ended the form of slavery that we call chattel slavery was capitalism, because the North could not compete with the South. So that's why they switched how slavery was going to look in America.
I guess the reason why I asked you that question is to try to prove a point. If a lot of this slavery votes was happening in the early you say in the 1700s and the early 1800s,
right?
It's trying to tell you something about this story that we was a bunch of weak people. That we did everything that you did. You know, you told us to do. No.
Right.
We fought. And that's the thing about it is, and this is something that I kind of I was watching a podcast on yesterday, and it was a Nigerian, and they asked the Nigerian, "Did you hear any stories about that your family told you about, you know, the early slavery of if you go out, you know, at night, you might get stolen or you might get swept up by, you know, the Caucasians or the Europeans?" And he was like, "No, we never heard none of those stories." So what kind of slave stories did you hear? He was like, "They don't tell us any slave stories."
Right.
So he was like, because you have to understand, it was warriors. You just ain't gonna walk in somebody's house and just take it. And that's why I keep thinking about 15 million people. You're not gonna walk in Africa and take 15 million people and nobody fought back. It's
right.
Europe didn't even have that many people to come. So you telling me 20 people can walk up and take 150 to 300, 3,000 people. You telling me Europe can come in and do that, and it's not possible. It's not possible to even do it here. When you come here, and you know, not only that is, that's the part that just don't get me. That's why when it comes to when they tell us this whole slavery movement is we're just weak. We yes sir, boss. You know, we do whatever you tell me to do. You know, and that's the thing about it is they make us seem like we was weak. They make us seem like we was simple-minded. They make it seem like we didn't know nothing. When this whole country is something that was already built, was already established, governments was already established before the Europeans came here. Actually, they took our ideas and went back to Europe and used our ideas to, you know, to better them. So, but again, that's the research, and that's when you start, you know, reading books and understanding the past history, because you telling me these Europeans come out of a dark age and all of a sudden they're more intelligent and more advanced than what we are, when we're the ones who brought them out of the dark ages. You know what I'm saying? All we hear about when it comes to, you know, Northern Europe and everything else is the Vikings and how savages and, you know, they just rape and pillage and take over and, you know, this and that. But then I'll just say all of a sudden that narrative got switched to us, and that's what we were.
Right.
So what if it's everything that happened in reverse? Because if you look at it, for you to make a city, you need to take down all the trees.
Right.
So you need lumber to build boats.
Right.
Me and you talked about this a lot. And it's funny that I carry on to what we did on Friday. What if everything was done in reverse and then we just don't know? Because that's what we was taught. I'm from South Carolina, you're from North Carolina, and we keep making it. We was told that all slavery came through Charleston or it came through New York and
Louisiana.
Oh yes.
Orleans.
So you don't hear about them coming in through Florida. You don't really hear that much. I mean, maybe Augusta, Georgia. Am I saying Augusta? No, Savannah. I'm sorry, Savannah. So we hear so many different stories, but something just ain't adding up. Because again, it's just like somebody walking in your house. And nobody just gonna walk in your house and take yours. It's not gonna happen without you fighting back, especially if you're protecting your family. So we need to understand this truth about it. And I know we keep hitting the nail, just keep hammering this in because that's how passionate we are about this.
Right.
Not trying to win people over. I'm not saying that we're not African. Some of us all of us have African blood in us.
Right.
But the majority of us was already here. Period. Our ancestors was here.
I think that's the part. I think that's the part to get them when you say we were already here.
Mm-hmm.
When you say we were already here, your mind goes back to the time frame of with the 1600s of when slavery started.
Yeah.
But what people don't understand when you saying we already here, that's what you're talking about. But you look 100,000 years prior to that, we may have left from the continent of Africa over to here.
Mm-hmm.
That's the part that people are missing. When you're talking about or you're having a conversation about it, people are equating two time periods at the same time. That's why I say you got to stretch how you see time.
Yeah.
When in if the continent of Africa is where all civilization started, and the majority of people can be agreeing upon that, then that means migration happened, and that people migrated from the continent of Africa into Europe, into Asia, into the Melanesian islands, Australia, Hawaii, of course, North America, South America. These migrations happen, and for you to migrate from one continent to another over a vast amount of water, then you had to have the ability to sail. You had to have the ability to travel on water. And so we're talking about thousands and thousands of years of process. We can't have a discussion and people get mad about, well, why are you saying we're here? When you don't understand how long one group has been on this side of the hemisphere.
True. Facts.
So that's the disconnect to me, is when people talking, they equate slavery as the beginning point of everything, but it's not. I mean, that was a small bump in time for us.
True. True. So
yes. You got to take your mind back 100,000 years when everybody on this planet looked like you. So and geneticists will tell you that. So it's not just me spewing this. And there's been, of course, changes in this earth. So I have no problem with understanding how long we've been on this hemisphere. It's just a lot of people just don't understand it, and they don't understand that we have built civilizations here in North America, South America, that are much, much older than what you call Europe. What's the European version of blackness? Egypt.
And so everybody's Egyptian, no matter what. Everybody's
right.
Egyptian.
So and you will have groups, conscious groups that argue over this. You know, the whole process of Egypt, when Egypt was one of the youngest civilizations that the African mind had put out. But they get you trapped in that one mindset, so you don't really understand. For example, when you think about the ancient city of Memphis, right? So there's no place on Africa that they found this ancient Egyptian city, but there is a city that's called Memphis that's still in the Americas. And they've actually built a pyramid there. So it's funny. It's just funny when you do your research, the things that you find out, and you find out that there's a map of the Mississippi inside of an Egyptian pyramid in Africa.
No, that's not true. I'm not believing you on that. No.
And then to understand,
Baker, false
right,
information, false information.
then to find out that the city of Memphis is really over here, those things start to blow your mind.
And that's something that's when research and when your inner self wants to attach itself to the ancestors here,
right?
To it's a process for you to even get to the yearning of wanting to know that, and that's something that we just happen to, because we're so. This is always in our face. The fact is that we don't want to see nothing, or it's always you're black, you're black, you're black. Yes, I'm black. Yes,
that's the color. That's the color.
Yeah, but the color means nothing. The color has, yes, because everybody else won't. I mean, color has nothing to do with it. Check out the Black Law Dictionary. Black means nothing. White means nothing. But what does black represent in a European mindset? Because when they went through their dark ages or their dark period of time is when they was under African rule. But I guess you don't want to know nothing about that. But, but that's something that, is because it's a period of time when we look at Europe, it's like, okay, yes, the Black Plague happened. They went through the Dark Ages. And then boom, all of a sudden, they're in this great period, and all of a sudden they're this and then there's that. And it's like, whoa. You skip the time period. You skip 800 to 900 years and don't say nothing. That means something got erased. If something is dark, if something is a blank, something got erased. And that's when we realized that Africa literally was in control and ruling the European continents, Spain, Portugal, France. So now we have to understand, wait a minute, if they spread it over there, you telling me they couldn't spread over here in the Americas? When we see Mansa Musa's brother say, yes, we're he take a huge fleet, and then they came to South America. They were actually South America, Mexico, Central America, Central America, or you could even say the lower part. They came to the Gulf of Mexico. So we, this is where we have the Olmecs. So in other words, wait a minute. So if they established there, because they, only one ship came back, and the ship that comes back didn't say, yes, all these people died in this ship on, these cruises, because I know he took like 300 to 400 ships with him. Now, and these ships ain't just ships with people. These ships were with animals, elephants, camels. They're when they migrated. And that's when Mansa Musa becomes the king of Mali. Again, the richest man that we know. Well, period. He's just the richest man, period, because of the resources that he carried. But at the same time, we were that here because, again, is it not a pyramid in Mississippi?
Oh yeah, I mean, it's pyramids all throughout the United States. It's like 150 of them.
But since they're not uncovered, because everybody got to understand that The Aztecs, some Moors, I'm thinking of, what's the people called? The Aztecs, down in Mexico.
Yeah, I mean, the Aztecs were their own people. Then you had,
No, but my point is, before all that got uncovered, that was covered with greenery,
right,
covered with, you wouldn't even know that existed until
right.
somebody happens to stump over something and wonder, and they just started digging.
Oh yeah, definitely.
That's here. That's
So,
here. But go ahead.
oh yeah. I think I want to get back to a point that you was making, and people, if you're a critical thinker, think of it like this. So, when Rome was in power, right? We're talking about like from the 300s to maybe the 400s, going into the 500s and 600s. Their rule was kind of strong. So, the Gauls, these wild people from the Germanic regions, came down and destroyed Rome. I mean, they totally destroyed Rome. These wild people, right? These what you would call illiterate, just savage people. And so these were the people that mainly populated Europe. So here's the thing. So in 1711, these North Africans came into Europe, well, back into Europe, and they started to reestablish footholds in Europe. And they started to teach literature, music, medicine, cleanliness, all back throughout Europe, right? Reestablishing Europe. It's interesting that you mentioned the Black Plague, because I want you to correlate it with what we're doing today. And so the Black Plague started in the 1300s. So you have from the 1700s up to the 1300s, where you have this strong Black rule. Then a plague hits, and 1/2 of the population of Europe is utterly destroyed.
Just disappeared. I mean, not say disappeared, but you're
but
right.
It's destroyed, right? Because they die out. Is it not interesting that after this time period is when you see Europeans take back Europe? So this disease killed out, it says 1/2 of the population of Europe, but it's not telling you who it killed out. It's not telling you the group of people that actually died from. And this gave chance for the Europeans to take back and reestablish hold in Europe. I just thought that was interesting when we look at today's time and how germ warfare is still being in operation.
Quick thing. You said that in 1711, the Moors.
7/11. 7/11.
7/11. What did I say? 1711? I'm sorry, 7/11. And this is something that most people have to understand. They came in not to destroy, but to build. And that's something that most people got to understand, is they came to build. They built Europe back up. They they was teaching. In other words, this is where the first colleges is. We see astronomy that's put out. We see science. We see math. We see all these things that Europe teaching us that our people taught them. Yes, I got that book downstairs. So we have to understand the meaning of reverse psychology, because basically we're learning everything that was taught to them by us, but so if we're that type of people,
right,
how we consider as being savages, and we run around half naked, arrows, bones in our mouth, stuff like that,
right,
which is a culture. Because if you ever go anywhere, say even going to the Caribbean, it's hot as hell. Yeah, I'm gonna be half naked. When you go to the Caribbean islands, what do? You walk around in a bathing suit all day.
Right.
So what you thinking? Africa is not even hotter. The more close you get to the equator, though, the hotter the region is. So yes, I'm not going to have my clothes. I'm not going to be fully clothed like the Northerners up in Europe are. Colder region, you need more clothes, versus in Africa, you really don't need that many clothes. Just like right now, when the summer, I'm in Philly. Is it cold outside today? Yeah, it's around 50 degrees. Around July, it's going to be around 90. Do I want to walk out with a jacket on? No. You want to, but you know what I'm saying? So you adapt to the weather that's going on. So when they keep telling us, oh, we found them and they was like this and like that, you might have found a group of people. You might have found a small culture that was not majority of the people that you found. You found a bunch of warriors and you stepped on his land and we kicked you right back off.
Right.
But that's not what history gonna tell you. But go ahead.
You know, it's like this, B. It's if you haven't traveled, you really won't understand what you're talking about, right? Because people, you can only rationale by the information that you have in your head already. So if you hadn't been out building your information, if you hadn't been out seeing the world for what it truly is, you really don't understand what you're saying. It's interesting that when you talking about, like, say, the year 3000 or 300 AD, right? This is when Egypt fell, and this is when the Grecians or the Mesopotamians came into Egypt, right? Persians, Assyrians. This is when the gateway, they all started coming in, right? Here's the interesting thing. Where did the people go?
They didn't disappear.
Right, they didn't disappear. They were pushed out, right? So they were pushed out. Some travel, and a lot of them travel across the top, and they ended where you would call modern day Mali, right? And it's interesting if you look at the Dogon people, right? The Dogon people are, if from the outside you say, wow, they're really primitive, right? But when you talk to the people, when you actually engage with them, you see they're extremely intelligent people. These are the people. These are the people in the early 1700s when English had come down there and was speaking with these people in the tribe. They had told them that the Siri star was two stars chasing each other. And so it wasn't until the 1930s when they had telescopes strong enough to see this there was a Series A and a Series B stars that were chasing each other.
Facts.
You see what I'm saying? So you're talking about a people that probably the same people that were these intellects that were in Egypt were pushed across the desert because of migration, because of war, because of many things. Sometimes from the outside, people may look savage, but you never know intellectually what they know until you speak to them. Now, the whole process of propaganda is to spread thought, that is to control other people's thought by the thought that you want to place into their mind, right? So when you're told that you're a savage by a savage, they're projecting thought into your head. They're projecting behavior into your head, the behavior that they, because look at America. Who's been savage in America? How many times have you seen in history where a group of black people lynched the whole town of white people? How many times in history did you see in America groups of black people would capture and enslave, rape, sodomize, abuse white people? How many times have you seen that? How many times have you seen black groups of policemen round up white people and beat them and water hose them, sick dogs on them? How many times you seen that in America? But yet, the projection that you have been given is that you are a savage and that your people are savage. So, I mean, but for you to believe it is the sickening thing. For you to believe that you are the savage, that you are the one that is uneducated, that you are the one that has no history. That's a sickness, man.
It's a learned behavior.
Yeah, it's a sickness.
But see, this is
Wow.
but you hitting it right there on the head is it's a learned behavior that we got from who?
Right.
Because but you just named so many different points, and you don't even see that going on back in the motherland of stuff like that happening. So if you have no history of that happening, it's really what paper trail do you have that the whole slavery movement happened the way it did?
Right.
Only what? Because insurance companies was insuring these boats, or these fake logs saying that you can carry this many people to point A to point B.
Right.
But
Here's an
what
interesting thing too. Here's an interesting thing too. And like I said, it's for critical thinkers.
Mhm.
So during the 1600s,
Mhm.
like I said, slavery was between a lot of different groups. It wasn't just black people being enslaved in the 1600s. So as the 1700s came into, this is when you see more enslavement of blacks, right?
Mhm.
So through the 1700s into the 1800s, England had always had the position that slaves had rights. Slaves could be Christians. So to be Christian, you had to have a mind. But Americans, they were mindless beasts. They just worked, right? So England abolished slavery in 1833. So from 1833 on, where's this mindset coming from? Because there was no trade of slaves, especially with England after 1830. They didn't trade slaves. So where was they getting these slaves from? Because think about it, they were English colonies up until 1776.
Mhm.
So after 1776, you establish yourself as an independent. So you're talking about now you have a 60-year period. Where were you getting these slaves from? They wasn't coming from England.
And England was already slowing down the whole migration of doing slavery anyway.
That's what I'm telling you.
So that's where you have to.
It wasn't
Go ahead.
Spain. It wasn't Portugal. So where were you getting these slaves from?
You turned on the people that was already here.
Hello.
You turned on the people that was already here. So that's the question that most people have to really do. And people don't like to have this conversation because it's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable because it's not really uncomfortable. It's attacking your inner man, and your ego is going at it like,
Making you think.
yo, it's your processor is kind of like overloading, like, yo, what the, because now all of a sudden you start thinking. When you start fighting against yourself, you start thinking like,
Right.
maybe what they're telling you is there's something to true. But again, don't take our information. Research that for yourself.
Exactly.
You have to research that for yourself, because you doing this research for yourself gives you a sense of you enlightening yourself. In other words, you opening up that inner man that's been hidden, that's been trying to talk to you, that you don't never pay no attention to, and then you start to join together. Now, when it comes to, we're in 2020.
True.
Now, if we know everything in England, France, say for instance, all these major countries that was saying they was so far, advanced, that was involved in the slave trade.
Right.
And we see that all these buildings and all these wonderful things that was built then,
Right.
but nothing has been built since then. All
True.
old buildings is still standing up. So
True.
now the question is, who the hell built those? Because again, because I mean, if we go into Spain, we see that all the Moorish statues, all the Moorish buildings are still there, and they're still standing.
Right.
Some of them been turned into churches, to some of these, big churches. So you start questioning who are the true architects of this planet that we stay on? You see what I'm
I
saying?
mean, yeah, no. You shouldn't question it. You should understand it for what it
But
is.
but
It's like,
but again, if somebody's teaching you mathematics, astrology, know thyself, understand thyself, colleges, who's bringing like real knowledge and education to you, how is it that all of a sudden that we're dumb now, or mentally we're
well, yeah, I get what you're saying.
we're told. I take that back. We're not.
Right.
We're being
I got
told that
got
we're
you.
nobodies, that we're a bunch of no-gooders, or when
I got you.
you know what I'm saying. But
I
this is
think
the thing.
I think a lot of it, B, is because, take for example, take your sons, right? So if
Yeah.
somebody kidnapped your son when he was a baby,
Oh hell.
and it doesn't matter how educated you were, it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
matter how rich your history was, and
Mm-hmm.
when they took him, and then all they ever tell him is he's stupid. He came from nothing.
I understand that. Mm-hmm.
He had nothing. In one generation, you could take away the ability to know your history. In one generation, you could take away the ability to know where you're from. So it's an architect that's behind the whole manipulation of history. And
Mm-hmm.
and it's easy to do, because once you set it in motion, that generation will tell this generation tell the next generation, which will tell the next generation. And until somebody questions it, it'll always be standard. And since it's standard, you're going against the grain. Even though you're the one with the truth, you're going against the grain because everybody has been taught a lot. So when you look at when you talk about architecture, right?
Mm-hmm.
And simple things like that. I mean, it's easy to follow the paper trail of where everything was built and the structure of how things were built and the movement of how things were built. Rome is accredited for a lot of things, right? They're accredited for aqueducts, which is transporting water from one place to another through giant tubes. They're credited with paved roads. All roads lead to Rome. When we know for sure that Egypt had the same things, and they were here 14,000 years before Rome. And
South
we know
Africa.
that, right? That's why I say it. And we know in South Africa, there's and this is what's not being told publicly. There's cities that they have and let me say this, walled cities that are over 200,000 years old. Now let that sink in. Let that steer around in your brain. 200,000 years old, not 2,000 years old, not 20,000 years old, 200,000 years old. Why are you not taught about the Wall of Berlin?
Mm-hmm.
Now that's in Nigeria. This wall is actually bigger than the Great Wall of China. Hello. So,
No, you're right.
so I'm
You're
saying
right.
there's so much history out there, this art history, you're just not being taught.
Or actually, when it comes to Egypt, and if anybody can grab a map and look at Egypt,
Yeah.
how else you think you can enter into, where's the first place you have to come through to get into Africa?
Yeah.
You have to go through Egypt. So
By
basically,
land.
you have to, that was the, I'm trying to think.
That was the access point.
Yeah, okay, yeah, you're right. You can say that's the access point. So we noticed that,
Go ahead.
the Persians came through,
Right?
the Romans came through, the Greeks came through. And yes, Egypt was, conquered. Yes, we understand Lower Egypt was conquered. Not Upper Egypt, but Lower Egypt was conquered. But everybody don't never understand what Egypt was before Egypt. we have Nubia, we have Cush, we have Kemet, and then at the same time, Egypt was a
Nubia,
part of was a part of Ethiopia before it became Egypt. So
Kush.
a lot of people don't understand the history when it comes to Egypt because we think in Egypt it's just Egypt. Egypt was just
Right.
not Egypt. Egypt was called many other things before it
Egypt
became.
was, that's
That's the
actually a Greek
last name.
name.
That's
That's a
the
Greek name.
last name that is
They didn't
rough.
call themselves that. That's a Greek name. They didn't
Yeah.
call themselves Egypt.
So we got Cush, we got Nubia, we have Ethiopia, and then we have Kemet with the K, Kemet.
Right.
But that's what we were. That's what these people were before it became Egypt. And again, everybody got to understand, Lower Egypt is upside
Top.
down to what we look at
Yes,
as
at the top.
the top. Northern Egypt is literally considered Lower Egypt in the history books. That's why we also, something else that we have to start studying and start understanding how everything that we look at is actually upside down to what our ancestors looked at. So everything that we look at is south is literally north. Every
Right.
map that we had was opposite of what we have. They had maps made of America was way before the Europeans came into play. So
Oh man, yeah.
how is it that we keep looking at ourselves as we're lower level? We're nothing. We're
because that's what's been sold to you, Brian. That's
I
what you
know,
hear. Like I said,
and it's frustrating. It's frustrating.
a person that's in an abusive relationship, if you hear that you're ugly and stupid every day, at some point you start to believe that. And that's the point. You know, media has always pushed upon us that we're criminals, we're a society of criminals. But yet, white collar crime happens every day. But you know, the poor always take from the poor. I don't care what color you are. I don't care what ethnicity you are. When you don't have and you feel that you're at your last, you're gonna take. That's social economics. You know, they keep you in a poor state for that reason. Um, but when you were talking about Egypt, Lower Egypt and Northern Egypt, the reasoning behind that is because of the way the Nile flows.
Yeah.
It's the longest river in the world that actually flows towards the equator.
Mm-hmm.
So you have the beginning, which is all the way down past Lake Victoria into Kenya, that flows all the way back up, and it empties out into the Mediterranean at what you call Egypt, and that was the Delta area. And like I said, along that river, I mean, you've had so many civilizations come up, from Kemetic, from Memphisonian, from the Knox, from the Nubians. I mean, you know, the Cushites. I mean, there's so many that have been created from that region. I think Brother Brian may have hit his video button by mistake. Hopefully, he'll rejoin us here shortly. But what I do want to talk about is how this image of who you are has been placed in your mind, and you not having a correct understanding for who you truly are and who you truly are in life. So Brother Brian may be down for a little bit, so I'll just keep going with the live. Hopefully he'll be able to join us again. I think he had a technical problems with his computer. I'm trying to look through here and see. But yeah, that's one of the biggest things is our identity, man. And anybody that tells you who you are outside of self, outside of family, outside of people that should know you, have to be giving you a false sense of who you are. And you have to understand that you're being manipulated. There's no way that somebody that doesn't know you can tell you who you are, can tell you how you think, can tell you what you've built and what you have not built when they don't know you. That's insane. And for us to continue to believe outside sources on who we are makes no sense to me. I mean, maybe y'all could help me with that. Hopefully his questions coming in. I can only get them from Brother Brian because he has it on his computer, which went down. So, but we're going to continue to go forward. We're going to continue to go forward. And I think he's coming in. He doesn't have his audio on yet, but we see the three-headed monster that's popped up. There he is. What's going on, B? You back? Say something so we can hear your audio. Okay, your audio.
All right, I'm back, man. I don't know. My computer, I guess it just do its thing. So I'm sorry, y'all. I don't know what to say.
Are you fine? Just keep going.
Yeah, but it's just for some reason the computer is not charging. So it's like it'll die on me.
Are you good? Technical difficulty is part of live shows. So so keep rolling with your point where you was going.
I don't forget where I was.
Okay. you was taking us through Africa.
No, because but we have to understand that why the people that's considered Egypt now look the way they look, because they was the most attacked out of the region of Africa, period. So when we have to understand the Persians come in and boy, that's what you see. That's what you see in Africa, and that's what you see in Egypt. That's what you see in Northern Africa, are Persians that came and settled and took over what's there now.
Right.
So we tend to not try to understand the history or understand the migration of what people has done. Movies tell us all the time. We just happen just to ignore the movies and what the movies, we look at the movies as entertainment versus looking at the movies. Are they telling you a part of history that you just don't know? Or you'd be like,
Right.
where do they get this idea or where they get this information from? And that's what they're telling you. But again, we tend to not want to understand. So I'm gonna have to sign off a little bit earlier than today because I don't want my computer to shut back off on me again.
All right.
If anybody got any questions or any topics or any, if you even want to be a part of this, understanding that we're about building. We're understanding your point of view, because maybe our point of view is not as strong, but at the same time, we're here to help one another and help us become a stronger group of men and women of understanding who we are, to enlighten yourself, to better yourself, to understand yourself better and not be confused and be, in a disarray of understanding what we are as a people. So I know I got to sign off. I know Jerome might not. Jerome might actually start over and do his own thing. You know how Jerome be getting. But I do appreciate, the opportunity that just be able just to come and just talk, man. I love this,
Right.
man. I understand.
Right.
This is just a part of what we are. So check us out on Three Headed Monster Podcast. Again, we are working on our YouTube, so it's coming soon, the next month or so, and we're gonna keep. I know we're gonna keep building. We can't stop. The Three Headed Monster. So, that's my last words. I don't know, Jerome, you want to put in your last, or you gonna keep going, or I don't know, man.
Nah, I'm putting my last words, man. It was good midday talk. It's always good coming together with like-minded people, hearing perspectives from others. like I said, please feel free to join in, drop lines on us. If you don't agree, put that on there. You know, we love to discuss, you know, because that's what it is. We don't really debate, we just discuss. We love everybody, and we appreciate you. Appreciate your support. B, I'm gonna get out of here. Appreciate you.
Appreciate you too, bro.
All right. Peace.
Peace.